Hello and welcome to another episode of The Lion's Den. Today we are talking about what might happen if Dark Angels get that little bit of an uptick in the data slate. And particularly what are we thinking right now that could look maybe better or that's kind of expected to get a bit of love in the slate. A lot of this is assumptions, thinking about what the new meta might look like when inevitably things change. People get buffs, people get nerfs, all that kind of stuff. But what does that all actually mean for us? And what will our place be within the meta? So I've titled this slide Return of the King because A, I'm a nerd, and B, I think that it's a really good time to mention the fact that I think the Lion might finally break through again. Which would be great because obviously last year at LGT, the Lion with Louis made it through to the Shadow Round. Fingers crossed we'll see it again, hopefully with me, with any luck, if I can. But, I do genuinely think that Dark Angels will be in a really solid position when this new meta changes, because I've been talking to a lot of people about what they're expecting the meta to look like and things like that. A lot of really good players. And we all come to the same consensus about where it probably will be, which I think is a good thing, that a lot of people are thinking similar stuff. From there, I don't think that the data slate really can't come soon enough. I think we're all just excited for it. Obviously we've seen the health of the meta update, which was the points increases for Death Guard and both Flavor of Night. Good, needed. But I think we all now want to see what else happens in terms of a data slate. Who's going to take more nerfs, who's going, are Death Guard going to have changes to their sheets? I kind of hope so. All that kind of stuff. Was the Death Guard nerf a bit late? Probably. Were the Knights changes a bit silly? Also true, and I think this nerf helps, but those armies are still very, very good. But I just think that looking at what's going to likely going to change in the slate, a lot of those expected strong armies that are going to be coming out are really good prey for Dark Angels. Your Blood Angels, your World Eaters, that kind of stuff. That was our bread and butter, where we really could sort of dominate those matchups quite comfortably, paired really well into them, all that kind of stuff. So, and especially with sort of the Lion coming in as well, I think he adds a couple of elements that could really benefit. So, I'm super excited for how that might look. And I think overall, it's a positive thing and a positive time to start thinking about Dark Angels, because even at this point, there is a list that I've done at the end that I think will look good in the new meta. And I think it's likely to receive some buffs as well in terms of points drops or datasheet changes, more likely points buffs. But, I think there could be some really good stuff that comes in there. So I think the most important thing will be what detachment we're looking at. Obviously, there is still all these rumours swirling around about Space Marine 2 and sort of being potentially locked out of the standard detachments. Interesting. Obviously, we have no news of this. We don't know when it's going to happen, if it's going to happen, all that kind of stuff. Obviously, I think a lot of us have been playing Wrath for quite a considerable amount of time. But I think after, and this is why I think it's important to sometimes play different armies. What I've learned from playing Blood Angels is that I think that tradability and that speed is actually a lot more relevant into the meta because of just how killy in many ways it is. So I think Wrath is really good, and it's nice to present that speed bump. But I think for me, it's probably going to be a return to Stormlance. Equally, that could be an element of player preference. I like those kinds of aggressive builds. That is the way that I like to play. I like to get in my opponent's face and sort of up that pressure. So, it does depend a little bit on your style. So then I think the key questions will be around these three strats that I mentioned. So we've got the Stormlance's flat 6 reactive move, Wind Swift Evasion, Leonid Aggression, and Honor the Chapter out of Gladius. I think in a vacuum, Leonid Aggression is probably the best. I've found myself really missing the flat 6 reactive out of Stormlance. Obviously, the Lion can't do it, which is a bit of a shame. But I think there's some real potential there, really positive potential. So I'm quite excited to see sort of what that might look like. But obviously then Gladius already has a d6, which can go to flat 6 reactive move, but it also has a lance stratagem that isn't locked to, unfortunately, basically an irrelevant unit type in mounted that it is in Stormlance. So, DWK going up to AP3 and wounding big nasties on 4s or little nasties on 2s, and potentially maybe re-rolling those ones to hit and wound, that could really be quite brutal. Leonin Aggression, obviously, I love, but I just, again, speed, I think, ultimately. So then it comes down to that argument of, is Honour the Chapter, is the access to a good lance stratagem better than constant advance and charge and fallback charge? My guess, looking at what I think the meta is going to look like, is no. I think Stormlance is going to be better still. But I think that's made on quite a few assumptions. And let's say that Knights get through a bit more unscathed, or there's more like big monster mash lists, then maybe actually that Gladius list with some number of Vindicators and access to one of the chapter, maybe that changes things. But equally, I think we're getting into that theory crafting stage, which is very difficult to predict. Ultimately, I think that long aggressive threat range that your opponent has to take into account is going to be really important. I've found with the Blood Angels again, just being able to go, okay, you're 18 inches away from me, I can potentially make that like a 1-inch charge. Or you're 24 inches away from me, I can potentially make that a 6-inch charge. That's going to make their life so much scarier. Obviously, different threat ranges in terms of not everything in Dark Angels moves 12 like it does in Blood Angels, and there's also a lot fewer units. But there's still a lot more to it in terms of if those units do connect. And then they're probably more likely to stay there rather than just trading like they would in Blood Angels, slingshotting those Deathwing Knights forward, and sort of forcing your opponent to do the mental gymnastics of what if he just rolls 6s with his advances, and what if he rolls high on his charges, and suddenly I've got 15 Deathwing Knights in my backfield on turn 2. Those kinds of questions I think can really disrupt your opponent and their thought process. Because they can't afford to just let you go for a risky play and accidentally auto lose on it. Obviously you might auto lose going on the risky play, and the examples that I'm giving there, you probably do. But there is a world where maybe you just go for it, and if you do go for it, you might just 20-0 your opponent. So, I think having that long aggressive threat range is going to be really important going into this new meta, and good to counter the long aggressive threat range, because just being able to soak up those charges, I think, is going to be really key. Data sheets that we're sort of looking at and going, yes, okay. The Lion is the first one, because he is obviously he had a big rewrite in the last one, so it made sense not to drop his points. He's not really seen much play outside of smaller GTs and things like that. Yes, he is seeing play, but it's not at those big tournaments for the most part. So that's kind of how I would judge, I think, if a data sheet needs some love, if it's not being seen in decent lists at those sort of really top level events. And I think the Lion has kind of unfortunately not really, it's been I can't speak English apparently. It's been an anomaly to see the Lion in those top lists for the most part. So I think he's due in line for some kind of support, be that a data sheet change, less likely again, or a points drop, which I think is quite likely. I think, to be honest, I would prefer a data sheet change, like I said in my last video, but I'll happily take points and get more resources. Deathwing Knights. Do we need 15? Is that the right number? Should we be playing them at all? That kind of thing. Are they actually just dead in the water because of the amount of 3 damage that's out there? There's a lot of really interesting questions around them, but and I keep on going to and fro on it. My latest Stormlance list, and the one that I'll sort of debut at the end of this video, does have 15 in it. And it's, I don't know, it's difficult. I think it's a meta choice. If the meta changes the way that I expect it to, which I'll talk about in the next slide, then hell yeah, like 15 Deathwing Knights all the way, baby. I would love it if they got a little points drop. That would be great. I don't think they will, just because I think the testing team will probably see the kind of meta. Like if we can guess at that kind of meta, and if that guess is correct, and let's assume it is for this example, they can probably see that, you know, power armor is kind of going to be king. So making sure that Deathwing Knights don't become overpowered, I think is going to be very, very good. Ravenwing Command, so ICCs, sorry, we'll do ICCs first. Inner Circle Companions are an interesting one. I think they are beautiful models, and they're a lot of the time they're the reason that people want to play Dark Angels. So it makes sense to give them some kind of buff. I think they need a complete datasheet rewrite. I think their offensive profiles are fine because they've already been rewritten. It's their abilities that kind of stink, and their defensive profile in particular. You know, +1 to hit into character, If it's +1 to wound into character, whew, okay, we're getting spicy, like real spicy. And then the -1 to hit is like when led is fine, but again, it's just making them more expensive, which I don't think is a good thing. But equally, I think if we are to see like more Grey Knights and more Thousand Suns in the meta, which I think we will, the ICCs with the Librarian become a very sticky unit with that 4-up Feel No Pain to psychic attacks, which I think then becomes suddenly very, very relevant, because then like Magnus like lightly scratches them and things like that. Like he really doesn't do much damage because he's got to get through a 4-up Invulnerable save and then a 4-up Feel No Pain, and there's so many layers against those particular armies. So like if they are looking a lot more dominant, then I think we will see those ICCs. And then finally, Ravenwing Command Squad. Are we going back to the 9 bikes? I kind of want to. Like, I loved playing that unit. It was so good. It was so much fun. The strats in Stormlance are, like, so enjoyable for those kinds of lists. And, like, I got a lot out of it. I don't think you can fit 15 Deathwing Knights, the Lion, and then the bike brick in. I think that's too many points. So unless suddenly there is a big change to those points, which I don't think there will be, it's unlikely, but it's one that I wanted to flag as like, this has definitely got potential. And it's a unit that I miss, and that flexibility and different options that it added. I think that can't be ignored. So with any luck, we will see that back. But I don't see it in the immediate future. It's the same with ICCs. I don't see that they feel too situational right now, but there is a universe where suddenly they become very relevant very, very quickly. Then in terms of what the guesses are, I think we're all thinking power armor meta. That seems to be the running theme. I remember watching some of the Disgustingly Resilient podcasts, and they were talking about, how like Blood Angels are probably really looking to kind of elevate. Although I do think that Eldari might actually be very powerful as well, which is one that I've missed out here, but depends if they get some nerfs or not. There's a few different factions that could get buffs. Emperor's Children and Orcs are two that I'm kind of expecting to get buffs. And I think they could be really good. Nids would potentially be another one. I think that book is really quite poor. But I don't know if, like, in terms of the amount of rewrite that they would have to do to make that work, the reward versus the risk doesn't add up quite so much, which is a bit rubbish for Nid players. But I think that may be the case, which is unfortunate, but you never know. Hopefully I'm completely wrong. Orcs, I do think will just get some points cuts, and I think that will just make them solid again. Hopefully not busted and broken. Hopefully they'll do it on the combat guys. But then maybe we'll see Bully Boys come back, which I think was always a pretty good matchup for us. Lots of 2 damage. Although it would be interesting to see Bully Boys then with Breaker Boys in then. But that'll definitely be really interesting. Overall, I think with like, the 4 armies I mentioned there of Blood Angels, Black Templars, Emperor's Children, and World Eaters, if we see a big shift back to armies like that, happy days. I think we're in a really good spot because they are armies that like I would be excited to go against, and sort of feel, I've got a bit of a spring in my step. These are the kinds of guys that I think I can hunt down and sort of cause damage to. I would really like to see a meta that's like that. I don't think we'd be a top dog in it, but I think we could definitely attack that meta from a certain angle. And I think because we'd become like this kind of meta predator, we would struggle against other sort of fringe armies, but I think that's also fine. Like those are the kind of armies that you need to be able to outskill if you want to play at those top tables. But I think a meta like that is quite favourable for Dark Angels. It would be the kind of meta that I was able to really cut my teeth in, sort of early 2025. It's the kind of meta that I sort of really felt that I could thrive in. So fingers crossed we will see that again. Then probably what most of you are waiting for here. I know this one's going to be a slightly shorter one, but in all honesty, that's because I am quite busy at the moment. I wasn't actually going to do this video, but then we couldn't get anyone else to do the slot, so I did it instead because I'm actually on holiday right now. But the list, which I'm sure most of you are here for, Lion L. Johnson, beautiful, we love him. Stabby boy. He's going to go out and he's going to secure our expansion objective and then potentially push further forward. We're going to be sort of making sure that he's scoring points, but then also presenting that potential to jump up, go elsewhere, secure other areas, set up nasty fights and things like that. I think most of the time we're sitting him in his 4-up Feel No Pain aura. Looking at the kind of armies that are out there, but on that go turn you can potentially flip it to the reroll ones to hit and wound in combat, and I think that really suits this list. And we've got Azrael and Assault Intercessors. Don't really need to explain that one. We've seen it a million times before. It's just good. Then we've got a Phobos Lieutenant. So he is 55 points and he is doing a bad impression of the Combi Lieutenant. That's because I just simply didn't have enough points for the Combi Lieutenant. He loses Lone Op and he loses priority objective secured, but he gets Shoot Scoot, which is very nice. And then he has all of the other key abilities of like Infiltrate, but he also has Scout and Stealth. So there's a lot of reasons that I think he could be good. And hopefully with the fact that the Lion is helping us with our rerolls, we don't need to worry so much about priority objective secured. I think the Phobos Lieutenant is one I definitely want to try. He also has Deep Strike, which is relevant just in case that maybe you want to think about that later game. If there's no like really good place to infiltrate with him, you might just want to pop him in reserves and kind of cause a bit of havoc late game. Drop him down, get it behind him lines, get a deploy, teleport home. It's only 140mm base, and that Shoot Scoot could also potentially just steal their home objective if they've just like stickied it and things like that. So it's worth bearing in mind if you think your opponent might be that way inclined. Then we got Intercessors, again, self-explanatory. 3 Deathwing Knights, again, in the context of this new meta that I've kind of somewhat fictionalized, but I think has sort of made decent guesstimations at. 2x5 JPIs. I think we go back to JPIs from Vanguard Vets because we're looking for more damage output for the trading pieces in this case. And I think having the Power Fist and the Impact Mortals and the access to the guns is just a little bit better than the Shield. For the 4-up Invuln, we want them to be like damage-focused trading rather than survivability-focused trading. Then we've got 2 Ballistas just to keep our opponent honest, all that good stuff. We've got some Scouts and we've got a unit of Outriders. So Outriders are actually my real like as a flavor trading unit because there's so much in terms of anti-infantry. Best example again for that was when a unit of Outriders blocked off a charge for Lilith and her 10 witches, and they killed 2.5, which then handed me the game there and then. Because it was Scorched Earth and I was scorching the objective that they were trying to get to, and they had to kill the full unit to be able to try and get onto that objective and stop me. So that was quite an interesting one, I thought. And also the Outriders, like, again, they're only a little trading unit, but they do open up access to, like, potentially you might need to get somewhere real damn quick. Auto advance of 9. You might need to give something lance to give it, that little bit extra. There we go, got that covered. So I do just really like the Outriders. I think they're very solid. So that's the list. I think this will probably see some points drops, which maybe changes the Phobos Lieutenant into a Combi Lieutenant. Hopefully maybe it adds a few more. Like, if it adds another unit of JPIs, I am very happy with this army. Like, very, very happy with this army. And would be very excited to get it out on the table. Even if it just adds another unit of scouts, that would be enough, I think. But yeah, basically one more unit, and I think it's really cooking. I really like it in that situation. Or if it just gets a couple of changes across its sort of, its data sheets maybe to like. I mean, it would have to be the Lion. I don't think any of those other data sheets get any changes. I think the rest of them would only be points. So yeah, no, I feel like maybe it's something that would change the Lion, like I talked about in the previous video. But yeah, I think it's a super exciting list. It's one that I'd probably try now. I don't think it's not winning a super major, but I think it could do quite well locally, which is really good, really positive, because it's nice to be able to play our Dark Angels as much as possible. I'm hoping that the slate drops in decent time before LGT and I can start testing something like this, because I would really, really much prefer to take Dark Angels to LGT, because they are like my favourite army. They are the most fun that I have. But yeah, let's just kind of see how it shakes out. See, talk about what you think the meta might look like, what you're hoping the meta might look like. And then, do you agree that we should go back to Stormlance and that kind of stuff? I think it's a really interesting question. But most importantly, thank you so much for you guys for watching. Thank you to our sponsors, Glasshammer Gaming and Terrainforge, alongside Trident FutureWorks. We've got some GTs that you can book tickets for based in Norwich, UK. So if you're around over the next couple of months, do feel free to check them out. They are on BCP. I think they're called the Battle of the Ragnar. They're also, the link to that will be in our link tree, along with all of our socials and everything like that. But yeah, I hope you've enjoyed watching. And remember, stay loyal, fuckers. We'll see you in the next one. Cheers, guys. Bye.